When the ice left Sweden, people began arriving in the area. Not much is known about early Sweden, but we do know that they farmed and traded with other nearby tribes. At the start of the 9th century, Sweden began to raid its neighbours. With their scary longships, they both pillaged and traded with their neighbours. However, these raids would gradually stop when Sweden became fully Christianised by about 1100 AD. Abandoning their pagan Norse gods like Odin, they began adopting Western Christianity. Approximately 50 years after this, the Swedes began to export their religion even forcibly to places like southern Finland. With much blood shed on both sides, they were successful. In about 1250 AD, the Swedes launched yet another anti-pagan crusade against Finland. Finally, in about 1293 AD, with the counter-raids by the Karelians, which are a group of people in modern-day eastern Finland and western Russia, the Swedes launched one final all-out crusade which was successful against them, and now finally all of Finland was now Christianised. Tragically, in 1350 the Black Death reached Sweden, devastating the country. Over the next few years, a civil war took place as the nobility wanted a new king on the throne. In 1397, Sweden joined in a union with Denmark and Norway, forming the Kalmar Union. Many years later, with people becoming tired of how Denmark was taking the lion's share of the profits, the Swedes organised a rebellion. This sadly caused the Danish king to kill many of the Swedish nobles. This event is known as the Stockholm Bloodbath. A Swede named Gustav Vasa, whose father was killed by the Danes, led another rebellion and defeated the Danes, making Sweden once again an independent country. In 1523, Gustav Vasa became King of Sweden. He also started more religious conflicts because Gustav Vasa being a Protestant and he had a strong hatred for the Catholic Church, so he confiscated their lands, which made Sweden very rich, and entered loads of wars. In the early 1600s, Gustav Adolphus became king, and he is best known for entering Sweden into the 30 Years' War. Sweden basically wants to fight with the Protestants against the Catholics. Sweden won the war and took large amounts of territory. During this time, Sweden founded the colony of New Sweden, which was now in North America. However, when the Second Northern War erupted in 1655, the Dutch, who were on the opposite side, invaded the colony in North America and took the short-lived colony for themselves. In 1697, Charles XII became King of Sweden at age 15. This led to several countries ganging up on Sweden, feeling such a young king would be a pushover, and so they declared war on his country in 1700. The young king quickly proved he was a great general, and Sweden continued crushing the coalition again and again. However, he made that classic mistake by marching to Moscow, and he lost the battle and most of his troops. He then quickly went back to Sweden and raised an army to attack Denmark-Norway, an ally of Russia. At the siege of Frederiksson Fortress, a single shot was fired late at night and the king fell down dead. It took another 2 years before the Great Northern War ended with Sweden finally defeated. Over the next few decades, Sweden became militarily weaker and weaker as more and more wars led to its decline. In the early 1800s, Russia and Sweden went to war once again. It resulted in Russia gaining all of Finland from Sweden. Then Sweden promised to fight in the war against Napoleon if they were given the nation of Norway, which they got in the Treaty of Kiel. But despite this, Norway declared independence and after a brief war, were defeated and were forced to join the union with Sweden. Over the next few decades, Sweden would enjoy peace. In 1905, the union with Norway ended. When the Norwegians declared independence from Sweden, this caused fears that there might be a war between the two nations. However, luckily, this didn't happen. When the First World War erupted, on the 4th of August 1914, Sweden publicly declared that they were neutral. Though Germany did try to get Sweden to join by offering former territories like Finland or the Baltic states if they joined, but this failed. The Central Powers badly needed iron ore and food, so Sweden got very rich by selling all of this. By the end of World War I, Sweden was in a good economic position. Following Finnish independence in 1917, the Åland Islands wished to be annexed by Sweden, as the island spoke Swedish. Sweden brought up this question in the League of Nations in 1921, however it was rejected and became an autonomous archipelago within the nation of Finland. Skipping forward to 1939, World War II erupted and, well, Sweden once again declared neutrality. However, trying to keep their neutrality was going to be far harder than in World War I, and the country did make a few concessions to both the Allies and the Axis powers. For instance, when they allowed German troops across northern Sweden in 1941, and Sweden also allowed for a small Danish brigade to be trained in Sweden, and Swedish troops also served with the German army. After World War II, Sweden grew more and more rich. In fact, from 1950 to 1970, the GDP of the country doubled. However, Sweden was badly affected by the 1973 oil crisis, with many losing their jobs. Sweden also thought about joining NATO, however they decided to maintain their path of neutrality. In 1986, Olof Palme, the Prime Minister of Sweden, was assassinated. They never caught the assassin. In 1995, Sweden joined the European Union along with Finland and Austria. In 2003, Sweden voted to see if they wanted to adopt the euro, however it was rejected. Now, Sweden continues their path of neutrality, but is involved in the peacekeeping missions in northern Mali, for example. Sweden really has made their mark on the world.